Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world. The world of darkness. Nobody expected it.
All right, let's see what the...
Nobody believed it. And nothing could stop it.
There are no experts. You probably know as much about possession as most priests. Look, your daughter doesn't say she's a demon. She says she's the devil himself.
The one hope. The only hope. The Exorcist.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an episode of The Jay Saki Show, a Halloween spooktacular episode where we review a horror film, but that's kind of what we usually do anyway, so whatever. How you doing tonight, Giles?
Doing fine. It's getting a bit colder here, so getting slightly more tired over time, but doing okay.
So, The Exorcist from 1973. The movie that's allegedly it's the movie that's hyperbolized as the scariest movie ever made. And clearly it's up for debate at this point, but for a long time this movie has had the honor of being called the scariest movie ever made. Of course, we all know Darby O'Gill and The Little People is actually the scariest movie ever made, but putting that aside, The Exorcist, scariest movie ever made.
I saw this movie, again, probably way before I should have done, though it was a censored for TV version. I really wasn't that particularly scared of it. I don't know why. Scariest movie of all time? I guess you could say that. Certainly at the time, when it was shown in theaters, paramedics were called because people fainted at certain scenes. Now, I think it's been a bit trivialized by other horror movies that have come out.
Yes, we live in an age of excess, and what was once really terrifying is not as terrifying, just because we get it. I am going to go on a very big tangent with this film because I've only ever watched this movie about 3 times. So if you have any preliminary thoughts, you better say them now before I take the stage and just start talking for a bit.
Well, this film has created its own kind of mythos with the people that have watched it. Things that people have said that happened actually haven't happened, and people have inserted things into the movie that doesn't happen. For example, like the demon is never really named in the film. It's taken the name of Pazuzu, but that was a kind of a bit of a later addition by fans. And much like other horror films, especially that era, it has like several different cuts, like a theatrical cut, a director's cut, a censored for TV cut, etc. But it, much like The Omen, it has a lot of interesting things that happen more off camera than on.
We'll get to that. Do you like this movie? Does this rank high on your favorite films list?
It does rank high on my my favorite films list, especially when you realize that a lot of the film it takes place in a very household environment. And what I mean by that is there's no broad sweeping vistas for the film. Most of what happens is conversations between 1 or 2 people, and not much, action, not much set pieces, not much scenery. A lot of it is very close and confined.
Right. Mind if I talk about my history with this movie?
That's your show.
So basically, I wouldn't say I love this movie. I do think it's really good, maybe even great, and it deserves all the praise it gets. I've seen this movie 3 times now, and every time I've watched it, it was different, or I had a different experience. Especially because I just watched it for the 3rd time about a month ago in preparation for this review, and I noticed all these things that I had not really noticed before. So Obviously, this movie is considered less scary with time. I have this opinion that people really need to watch original versions of things, or films that were the first to do certain things, because then later on, because if you don't, copycat films come out later, and you watch the copycat film or the remake, and then people say, oh, you should really watch this older film that was the first. And then you watch that older film and you say, well, that wasn't as interesting as the newer version. When in reality, the older version might even be better, but because you saw a new version of that thing, it just was not as interesting. My first experience with exorcism type movies was watching The Exorcism of Emily Rose. That was the first time I ever saw that kind of a thing, and I thought Exorcism of Emily Rose was downright terrifying. So then years later, whenever someone brought The Exorcist into our family household and we watched it, in my mind I was like, oh, I've seen this kind of thing before, and for some reason The Exorcist just did not come off as scary, because I'm like, oh, I already saw Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was so much scarier. And then it was years went by, got an apartment, and it was late at night, and I had to put together a piece of furniture, and it was very late. But I'm like, yeah, I have to start getting my apartment together, or else it will never happen. And I'm like, I should put on a movie while I put this. I think it was like a desk or something while I put this together. So I put on The Exorcist, and that night, granted it was late at night, the full effect of what that movie should have had on me the first time happened the second time I had watched it. Every single little moment came across so perfectly, and then I realized, holy cow, this is one frightening movie. And hats off to the movie. It took the second watch for me to actually fully appreciate it. And maybe the first time I watched it, maybe I was looking down, I missed all the little demon moments that would appear. But it was the second time where the movie really took my breath away, if you will. And I said, wow, this movie really is every bit as good as people say it is. Then this third time watching it, it's still really good, but I developed a lot of opinions on it. There's certain things in the plot that happen, and I was wondering why they happened and why I missed it the first time. So, do you have any thoughts on the overall plot or story of this movie? Is it all just normal for you? Is there anything that's strange?
Not particularly. It took a couple of watches to actually get everything that the film was saying. I think the biggest difference between this and other exorcism films and even other religious horror films is that it comes from a book, and it was written by William Peter Blatty, and he was heavily invested in the film. But he was a practicing Catholic who was very, not influential, but he was very active in his church, and he had a lot of knowledge on the church's workings and theology, which made everything seem a little bit more real compared to other religious horror films that treats demonic possession and all these other things kind of like magic, almost.
That's probably true.
There are lots of interesting little bits in the film that I found quite interesting that I didn't get the first time. The first time, the famous scene where Regan turns her head 180 degrees, and I'm not going to quote directly because there's a lot of swearing in the film. I don't want to get your channel demonetized or anything like that.
I'm not even monetized, but this is a family-friendly channel, so no swearing regardless. I wish I was monetized.
Yeah, but she turns her head 180 degrees round. She says, do you know what you did, your so-and-so daughter? It's the voice of the director who fell down the stairs and broke his neck, and the entire scene is there to imply that the demon killed him.
About that, I guess we're just assuming everyone has seen this movie. So
if you haven't, go watch it.
Right. It's a great movie. Everyone should see it. So this time around while watching it, there were 3 things that stuck out to me that I knew were there the first 2 times I watched it, but I really had to stop and say, wait, hold on a second. So the whole movie is to refresh our audience. There's a film being made in, I think, New England.
Yeah, I think it's Boston it's Boston, I believe.
Yeah. and the main lady is an actress, and her daughter gets demonically possessed. And actually, the demon does have a name. His name is Mr. Howdy.
That's what she calls him, yes.
And there's a thing where I guess the fictional movie they're working on, the film director at some point apparently enters the house and goes upstairs and gets chucked out the window and falls down the stairs and dies. And it all happens off screen. Like there's like a detective who talks about it, and it's like, oh yeah, this thing must have happened. And it comes and goes, and I'm like, okay, wait, please inform me. Why was the film director at the actress's house? Why was he in the upstairs room with Reagan, the girl who's possessed? And why did the demon check him out the window?
Well,
it's a plot point, but I'm like, that all happened? Okay.
Well, the answer to that is that he's a friend of the family directly, and he is kind of like the god uncle to Reagan.
Okay.
And it's assumed that he kind of was drunk, which he was, and had an accident, fell down the stairs and broke his neck. But the scene where Reagan turns her head around, like I said, is there to imply that the demon killed him and he didn't just fall by accident.
But apparently, the main female character, the mother, I don't think was she even aware that the director was at her house.
Oh yeah, yes, they were having it's the scene where they're having a party, and Regan comes downstairs and wets herself, and she's taken back up to bed, and I believe the director goes to say goodnight to her.
Okay, that must have happened so fast I missed it.
Because he's not just like a director, he's a friend of the family and sort of a kind of uncle figure.
Yeah, okay, that whole element just went completely over my head. I just remember them talking about, oh yeah, the director fell down the stairs and apparently he fell from the window from the room that your daughter was in. I'm like, wait, what? When was he there? Why was he there? Did he sneak into the house? It was just not conveyed well to me in the film. Or maybe I'm just stupid. Well, thank you very much for clearing that up for me. Okay, another thing was at some point in the movie, a crucifix winds up underneath Reagan's pillow, and the mother's like, who put this there? She was to the maid, like, did you put this there? And the maid's like, no, not me. So, where did the crucifix come from?
That is a particular good question, and I believe it was one of the friends of the family, even though it wasn't specifically mentioned.
Okay.
There's a lot in the film. There's a lot in the film that is supposed to kind of misdirect you because of one big overarching concept of the film is Regan actually possessed, or is this a mental health issue? And that's what the demon that's possessing Regan wants people to think. So there's a lot of disjointed things, like she I know we're jumping a little bit further ahead, but it kind of answers your question in that the demon keeps throwing out false flags and mixed signals to throw people off the trail and toy with them.
I still want to know who put the crucifix there, because it comes up, it's like, who put it there? And then it just disappears from the story. Was someone at the very end supposed to come out and be like, I put the crucifix there? So, I was just wondering, just random, a crucifix randomly winds up underneath her pillow.
Yeah, there's a little bits in the film like that where they just kind of indirectly tell you like how the demon got there in the first place was them playing with a Ouija board. Okay,
really quickly, were you inferring before that the demon maybe put the crucifix under the pillow?
It's a possibility, because we see him use like religion against the people, because again this is a film involving Catholic exorcism and Catholic priests, so the demon will constantly change its interactions and perspective with the priests and surrounding people just to toy with them.
I do think the main priest character is like the most almost unrealistically skeptical person in the world, because I get the angle the movie is going for, that like even like Because it does in a very effective way show that even the church is skeptical, like, is this even an actual demonic possession case? Because these are so rare. But he shows up in Reagan's room and, like, the drawer, like, randomly opens or closes by itself. He's like, oh, did you do that? Huh. And then Reagan, like, repeats the words of, like, the homeless man, and he's like, huh, whatever. Then she, like, pukes out green pea soup all over his face, and he's like, well, I'm not convinced she's possessed. And I'm like, I think even an atheist would be convinced of the devil's existence in that moment. But he's like, nope, not convinced.
I think it's more the deeper thing of he's having a really big crisis of faith because his mother was dying and passes away during the film. He is a psychologist employed by the church to help with seminarians. So he has to deal with a lot of other people's issues, and just all this constant stress is piled up upon him, and he has issues believing, even when he's presented with evidence, because one of the first things he does, he like throws tap water on Regan when she's possessed, and the demon reacts to it like it's holy water, and he says, well, it's just tap water, it's not holy water.
Right.
And that's something the demon did to throw him off.
Right. I still think he was, like, ridiculously skeptical. So the last thing you brought up there, or what you brought up before, his mother dying. This was something that I know happened every time I watched it, but it only really registered this time around because it's a big plot point. His mother dies earlier in the movie, and in the final act, there's a scene where he basically looks at the bed and he sees, like, Reagan as his dying mother. It's very 2001 Space Odyssey-ish, and I know it happens and it goes and the movie continues and it ends, and I'm like, okay, what was the symbolic significance of his mother dying and him seeing his dead mother in place of Reagan in that moment? What was the point there?
The demon just wants to taunt him. That's it. The demon just wants to taunt him. Can't refer to the demon as she per se, but the demon in Regan is constantly taunting the priest and giving a little bit of the truth and then obfuscating it. And it just, there's the other scene where he's asked by a beggar, "Can you spare $1, Father, for an old altar boy?" And the demon repeats it precisely back to him.
Okay, but it was a big plot point. Like, why did they not just write the mother out of the story? Okay, there's a lot of time with the mother dying, and a whole scene where he looks at the bed and he sees his dead mother in the bed in place of Reagan. I'm like, symbolism? What's going on? I feel like there was a big point that was being made there. It was not just a taunting, but I just did not get what was going on there.
It's because Father Damien feels immense guilt at him being in the priesthood and not being able to take care of his dying mother. He has the conversation with his brother early on in the film that he could have become like a successful and wealthy psychiatrist instead of joining the clergy, and that would have allowed him to actually help look after their dying mother when he's away in a different part of the state.
Okay.
So there's immense guilt over not being there for his dying mother.
Well, so what? I mean, I get the sense that there was some big, beyond the fact that he felt guilty over it and the fact that it came back in the end, I feel like maybe there was some point, like maybe by saving Reagan he could save his mother, or maybe it was saying like this is what he was meant for, he wanted to save his mother, but really he was meant to save Reagan, you see?
I don't know. It's just the demon messing with him. It knows what makes him upset and angry, and it will keep pulling at those strings.
Or it's the filmmakers messing with me because they know what's going to make me upset and angry, and they're pulling my strings.
I got it. I got the reference. The demon is constantly there to mess with him because he is doubtful, skeptical, and he feels guilt and remorse and anxiety compared to the other priest who is far more steadfast and strong in his ideals and beliefs.
Okay, well, I think the point was, I think the director and writer were trying to make it about he felt guilty he couldn't save his mom and he regrets joining the priesthood, but the point was, by saving the little girl, he was sort of fulfilling what he wanted to fulfill for his mom. That's the connection I'm drawing out of it. Otherwise, it's just pointless.
I don't think it's pointless. I think it is literally there just so that the demon has something to taunt him with.
Yeah, but this film, let's see, is there more we can talk about with the directing? Because it is a very well-directed movie, and it is a very well-written movie, and I agree, William Peter Blatty being Catholic, definitely, like, he had a very good nuance to the writing, where it felt like a Catholic actually wrote it. And I think William Friedkin had enough flair as a director to work with that script and bring it to life. But
William Friedkin is kind of infamous amongst the cast of that film for essentially torturing them. Is by the time like Regan is possessed, she's played by a stunt double. Because obviously they don't want an actual little girl doing the things that they did in the film.
Okay, sorry. Let me go ahead. Finish that. I'm going to comment on that in a moment, but finish your thought.
She's played by Eileen Dietz, who's a stunt double, and the person doing the voice is Mercedes McCambridge, and she purposely drank whiskey and raw eggs and chain smoked to get that voice.
Wow.
But William Friedkin didn't think it was enough and literally tied her down to a chair and tied rope around her neck to make it sound like the demon was actually struggling against bindings.
So William Friedkin personally jumped on top of her and like tied her down to the bed and tied a rope around her neck. Eileen, stay still for one moment while I tie this rope around your neck.
That was Mercedes McCambridge, who was the voice actor for the possessed Regan, and apparently as well, William Friedkin set off a gun next to Max von Sydow's ear to get a shocked reaction, and Max von Sydow just lost the plot and went absolutely ballistic on him for doing it.
Wow. Sounds like... I'm not sure if this is making me admire William Friedkin or making me dislike him.
Okay, there's one more interesting scene. There's, you know that bit where the mother is like kind of yanked or forced backwards across the room?
Right, yes.
Yes, well, they did that as a practical effect by putting a harness on her, but William Friedkin didn't tell her how hard they were pulled, so she was literally yanked across the room so hard it permanently injured her back.
I'm trying to debate with myself whether or not, I mean, that's in theory, I like the idea of a director doing things to set up the actors so they're a bit unprepared, like to get a perfect reaction out of them, but clearly he must have taken something too far. He hurt her back. We can agree that that was not a good idea. If you're damaging your actors and actresses on set, then that's no good. But he did deliver a great movie.
It's a great movie with a lot of great scenes and great acting, but I think a lot of that is Blatty, because he also wrote and directed other films, and he has very good sort of dialogue between people.
He does. It's very real, very subtle, because that's the whole thing with The Exorcist. Like, everything about it feels so subtle and so real that when Regan starts getting possessed, it really is just so surreal in those moments.
Yeah, there's a lot in the film that's probably a bit too real, as we just went over. You know, there's not telling your actors something and getting them to react to it like they did in The Thing, and then there's yanking them so hard it permanently injures their spine.
But really quickly, I wanted to mention we were talking about The Exorcist a bit when we were reviewing The Omen, and you were saying the Exorcist is so much worse, I think. And I had forgotten about some of the more provocative scenes with the young girl, even though she's being played by a stunt double. I think I must have blinked or something, because it is very shocking and gross what's happening, or it's filmed in such a way that you can almost miss what's going on. But yeah, there's definitely some very gross, vulgar, nasty things being implied when you watch it. So I had forgotten about that. So I guess I have to remind myself, or remind our viewers, viewer discretion.
There's a lot of foul-mouthed stuff in there. That's kind of awkward to watch with your parents.
I remember watching this film with my mom, I think. I guess I never really... I don't know, what does my mom think about this movie? This was when I was probably in my early 20s, so we were getting more used to letting R-rated films into the house.
There are parts where it's certainly foul, and thank God they actually got a stunt double to do it.
Something else I want to talk about. Some of my other favorite directing moments is something that also went over my head like every time I watched this movie until the third time. Well, it's the movie starts off with the one elderly priest, the experienced priest, doing like an archaeological dig in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I don't know, they find like a chest with some items in it. There's some conversational bits, and then he he's outside and he sees like a statuette of something on top of a hill, and he climbs up and he looks at it, and there's like a standoff moment where he's just staring at this old, ugly-looking statue from ancient times, and then it cuts to the U.S. Initially, I'm like, what's that about? And even though I didn't get it kind of came across, because everyone says, oh, it's explicit. It's him coming to the statue is an idol of the devil, and it's sort of his face-off moment of what's going to happen, and that's never said at all. But I think it puts the idea in your head that that's what it is, and that is what's happening. But the point is, he's digging in this ancient area, close to the Holy Lands. He finds this old pagan idol of some kind, and he does have this moment where he just stares at it, and it's like staring back at him, and you can tell that, or it kind of puts in your head very subtly, he's staring at the devil, and it's sort of this preliminary moment of like, we are going to do battle in the future without using words.
It's explained a bit later on that he had previously, even though he was like an archaeologist, he had previously performed an exorcism on this same demon when he was a much younger priest, and that's why he was Father Merrin, the character, was referred to Regan to help in the exorcism. It's explained a bit in this film. Like, I think there's just a couple of lines saying that I'd faced this demon before, etc. But they try to explain it in other Exorcist films, which aren't very good.
Right. On that note, are there any other good Exorcist? Oh, nah. We're gonna get off topic. Yes. Okay.
Easy answer is yes, 3, and leave it at that.
Because at any time, because I know there's been tons of movies trying to cash in on the Exorcist thing, and I think I always just kind of sigh and groan when I see an Exorcist movie being advertised. I haven't seen Exorcism with Emily Rose since I saw it back in 2006. I know a lot of people like that one. Do you think that was actually good or holds up?
I think it's okay. I think, again, the problem is that The Exorcist, like we said, is not just from a Catholic perspective, but it's written by someone who was knowledgeable about the church and actually did research on exorcism and how the church handles it. And other exorcism films kind of treat exorcism like a magic ritual.
Right.
It kind of just, I don't want to say it waters it down, but it becomes so nebulous and airy that there is less interest in it from me, because the priests in the Exorcist film are using the rite of exorcism, they're doing tests, they're doing all these other things, and all the other ones are treating exorcism like it's a spell.
Right, yep, I don't disagree that much. But okay, here's a topic I wanted to talk with you about. So we reviewed the Omen some months back. I guess we compared it against The Exorcist a bit. If someone were to say, oh, I'm not really into horror films, but I'm maybe trying to broaden my taste a bit, what do you think I should watch, The Exorcist or The Omen? Which would you recommend for them?
I would say it really depends on the person and how sensitive they are to certain things, but I would generally say start with The Omen, because it deals a lot more in the less explicit, more sinister kind of things, and you could kind of shrug off and even laugh at the practical effects being a bit goofy by today's standards, while The Exorcist is a bit more graphic.
Okay, so yeah, initially I was thinking, I would tell someone to, between the two, I would say I would recommend, there's someone who was uneasy about watching horror films. My initial thought was I would tell them to watch The Exorcist over The Omen. It wasn't until I just rewatched it that I was like, oh yeah, this movie does have some really graphic, gross moments that could turn off a lot of people. So I see what you mean. I don't disagree that there's some really foul things in The Exorcist that's enough to make someone not want to watch it. That being said, though, The Exorcist, for all the agony that it puts you through, it is a happy ending, or kind of. Yeah, I'll basically say it's a positive ending.
Well, the girl survives, and the priests do their job. That's about as much as you can say.
Yeah, and The Omen has a more, at the very least, like the devil wins in The Omen for the moment. So on that basis, I would say, like, well, do you want to watch a movie with the quote unquote happy ending or a quote unquote miserable ending? The Omen has technically a more miserable ending, but The Exorcist is more foul and gross. I would still say, for someone who wants a spiritually uplifting movie, The Exorcist was. I would nudge them in the direction of The Exorcist.
I think the big sticking point with The Exorcist, even though it's an adult stunt double, essentially it is a child getting abused, and if you're sensitive to that, that could turn you off the entire film.
Also, much like The Omen, The Exorcist also had a very cursed production with lots of problems happening.
Yeah, well, where do you start with that, apart from its insane director?
I was just about to make that joke.
Oh, well.
You beat me to it. I don't even remember what the cursed production issues were, but I know it's one of those ones where allegedly, like, oh, the whole set was cursed. Every bad thing that could happen happened.
There were tons of issues. For example, there was a major fire that destroyed the entire main set, and almost every member of the cast and crew was injured, and there were several deaths associated with people who were in production of the film.
Seems to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there were several people who died during the production of the film, and when that kind of happens, and you're dealing with, a film about the devil, a little bit of superstition will creep in.
Right. I think, like, to my memory, in terms of, like, quote-unquote cursed productions, in fairness, there are a lot of movies that have horrible productions or seem very cursed, like The Wizard of Oz, if you will, was a very troubled shoot. But I guess whenever it involves the devil or Catholicism, it raises eyebrows. So it could just be coincidence, but I know the first three films that come to mind are, it's always The Omen, The Exorcist, and The Passion of the Christ also had a very cursed production. But
I think that's just a byproduct of films. I'm pretty sure you can find like other films that are more innocuous where people have died during or after, or there's been horrific things that happened. But because you're making a horror film about the devil, people become a little bit more skittish, you know.
is there anything we've missed talking about with this movie?
Well, there's the one thing that we haven't mentioned, and that's the theme Tubular Bells, which everyone knows is the Exorcist theme.
Oh yes, that's one of those themes where same deal with the Omen. I mentioned that the main chanting theme, the Omen. I'd heard it so many times in parodies that it was humorous to hear it in the Omen. I had a similar reaction with The Exorcist, where I started watching. I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, the Tubular Bells is it's one of those things, like you said, like the Omen, that's been parodied and used in parodies and so many other things so many times that even people who have not seen The Exorcist know that it's the Exorcist theme. The Exorcist, I think, it's one of those iconic movies, so it's always going to be parodied, like the vomiting pea soup. People have spoofed that many times. Last time, what other films came out in 1973 that were quite interesting?
So I was just looking at my list of everything I've seen from that year, and I don't have much. I just have on my list of films I've seen The Exorcist, and I have The Sting. Have you seen The Sting?
I've seen The Sting. There's also Papillon. There's a film, an adventure film with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. There's the Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon.
I watched that at one point. I don't know if I finished it. I think that was not that great. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait. Enter the Dragon. Is that does Bruce Lee star in that movie, or is that Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee.
Okay, there's like a Bruce Lee biopic that came out later where someone else was playing him called Something the Dragon. So, blah.
There's also another iconic horror film that came out that year, the Wicker Man.
Never seen it. Is it any good?
It is a very good British horror film. It's one of those, kind of creepy suspense things where more and more seems to be a bit wrong until it all climaxes in the end.
I mean, I've watched everybody's YouTube videos reviewing the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man.
Yes, I like Nicolas Cage, and I kind of like that movie because it's kind of fun and dumb, but it's nowhere near as chilling, I guess you'd say, than the original.
Yeah. On the subject of William Peter Blatty, have you seen his movie, The Ninth Configuration?
I have, yes. Very well directed, very well shot. I think it's very underrated.
I need to watch it again. I watched it decades ago, and I didn't get it, but I guess it has a following. It's one of those things that I'm going to have to give myself time to rewatch.
He's an artistic film director, shall we say. He really likes heavy amounts of subtlety and inference, which is kind of my favorite thing in horror films. But I think he was an underrated director and writer. Especially if you look at all the other films he did. I know we're not supposed to really go into the other Exorcist films, but he was very influential in Exorcist 3, and that was a good film, as was The Ninth Configuration, and his books are pretty good as well. So I think he was generally underrated for the time.
Okay, and anything else about this movie? Anything else we should say? I feel like we've maybe talked about everything there is. Oh! What did we learn, audience? Movies are always about learning. What did you learn, Giles?
Don't invite demons into your house.
Yes. Don't play with Ouija boards. That's not going to end well. I think I learned that if you have someone who's actually a devout Roman Catholic writing your movie about Catholic things, the genuineness comes across much better.
Yeah, there are plenty of other, if not Exorcist related, then religious horror films. They just don't understand how the church works or how Catholicism works. I've even seen an Orthodox horror film where an Orthodox person pointed out all the things wrong with it, to the point where it's just like a Catholic film that doesn't understand what orthodoxy is. There's a lot of people who write religious horror films who seemingly know nothing about religion.
Oh, I think The Exorcist also led to the rating system being changed to some degree.
I can't remember that specifically. I know it was rated X in America and it was rated 18 in Britain.
Well, I mean, it was almost an X rating in America, and I think they got it knocked down.
Well, the IMDb says it's X, but it like I said, there's 3 different cuts of the film, so I guess it depends what cut you're talking about. Because there's like a made-for-TV cut that's more heavily censored, there's the director's cut, and the theatrical cut.
Yeah, do you have a preference on which cut? I think the director's cut is the best.
Director's cut, definitely. I always almost defer to the director's cut when it comes to films, because a lot of theatrical cuts tend to change stuff because of the general audience's sort of reaction to the film, and that's not always a good thing, narratively speaking.
I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, yes, there's a thing where you really want to see the director's original vision. There are times where studios have put their foot down on directors and have said, no, cut this back to something more workable. And I do think the studio knew what it was talking about. But certainly it's always interesting to see a director's cut. But yeah, I think the director's cut is the best version.
I generally think it's better. Unlike you, maybe I'm more okay with unhappy endings. And that tends to be what's in the director's cut. Not for this film, though. The ending is relatively similar through each cut.
It's like, the ending is like, the priests both die, but we all die, and we have to go out, in a blaze of glory. I think what I learned from this movie, that I hope that I can go out in a blaze of glory, jumping out a window and falling down some concrete stairs, killing a demon. Yeah, does that sound about right? Better to dive out a window, killing yourself on concrete stairs, to take a demon with you, than to wither away with old age.
But you could argue that's what the demon wanted.
You're clearly not a romantic.
No, I'm not. I'm a realist. And I think the demon wanted to just lash out at priests. That's my entire ethos, the thought of the film. It wanted to punish priests, and it did.
But I think the demon did not intend for the main priest to jump out the window.
This is, again, getting into Exorcist 3 territory, and we don't want to go into there yet.
Right.
Let's save it for Exorcist 3. Save it for that review.
Okay, do you have anything else at all?
Not particularly. Watch The Exorcist. Watch the director's cut. If you're not particularly squeamish, it's a really good film, and it inspired a lot of other films to do a lot of similar things. So, pretty good.
Yep, I have nothing else more to add, so that is all, audience. That is all we have. Have a good night.